Hi everyone, my name is Billy Strew and I'm the Policy Analyst Intern at Texas Homeless Network. And it's my pleasure today to get to talk to you about why multi-sector coalitions are important and why they're worth the investment of our time and energy, especially when it comes to addressing massive, complex social problems such as ending homelessness and housing insecurity. Now, I like to always begin a presentation with my face so that there's a face to the voice, but I'm going to take my face out so you can see the whole presentation and not see my goofy expressions. So let's jump right in. So what does it all mean? I want to start with some basics of what it means, leading us to multi-sector coalitions and define some terms. I don't want to dig too deep into the theory weeds, but hopefully we can set a bit of a foundation for understanding. So let's begin with community organization. So this is a process of people joining forces and combining efforts to address what matters to them, like a complex social problem. Now, there are lots of ways to do community organization, such as social planning, social action, grassroots organizing, or building coalitions and community partnerships. And so saying coalitions, you might guess where we're going next. So a coalition, it's a group of individuals and or organizations with a shared interest, committing to collaborate toward a shared goal. In homelessness and housing services, these look like our local homeless coalitions and other similar partnerships. I got to attend one day a meeting with the Austin Housing Coalition. And this is a group of organizations and citizens who have come together to support expanding affordable housing in Austin, which is a very complex problem in Austin. And that's awesome. Let's do it. But what if we got a little more strategic by spreading the net wider whenever it comes to kind of a wider problems that affect bigger than just one community? So let's talk about multi-sector coalitions then. This type of coalition is a strategic collaboration that happens when individuals and organizations representing the span of government, nonprofit, private, and public get together to address social problems that affect the whole community, that affect everyone. So let's talk about social problems then. There's an article by Kania and Kramer that explains two types of social problems that I think is helpful to think about when communities are organizing. So two types of social problems. The first one are technical problems. These problems are well defined and the answer is already known in advance. So let's think about funding a scholarship or building a school or building a hospital. These kind of problems can be tackled by just one entity or one organization or one sector. So if you want to fund a scholarship, you have kind of an education sector. We can deal with this. Let's fund a scholarship. Let's build a hospital. Now, the second type of social problem, though, are adaptive problems. These are the ones that are complex, and the answer is not known. For these problems, there is no single entity that has the resources or authority to solve them because they affect everyone. They are systemic and large scale. Think about reforming public education, improving community health, or ending homelessness. Even people who may think they are outside of an adaptive problem are either in the problem or part of the problem. Everyone is affected by adaptive problems. So adaptive problems need a more large scale and outside of the box strategy. And I think that multi-sector coalitions are a good place to start. So why multi-sector coalitions? Why should we pursue a multi-sector coalition to address homelessness and housing insecurity? First, there is a collective impact. Collective impact can reach farther and higher and wider than an isolated effort from one entity, organization, or even one sector. You get strength in numbers. You get wider and higher and farther influence and farther reach to bigger organizations and bigger populations and groups. And you can deal with adaptive problems with that collective impact. Second, You have diversity. Diversity breeds greater influence. Crossing sectors brings more voices to the table. And so imagine you're driving down the highway, the hypothetical highway of ending homelessness and housing insecurity. And you're moving right along, but then if you're paying attention, there are these intersections that you come across where you realize, oh, hey, this affects you too. We can work together in this. So I think that even greater influence for change can be found in those intersections. Housing is connected to everything. Studies show links between housing stability and academic achievement. So you're going along the highway and all of a sudden you come across the education sector and realize, oh, this affects you too. Let's work together. There's links between housing stability and increased physical and mental health and economic advancement and mobility. Representatives coming together from different sectors bring differences in resources, experience, demographics, industry, and perspectives. This is strength. Now, these differences can certainly uncover new challenges as different values and cultures have to learn how to work together. However, I think there's even deeper power and influence that can be discovered in learning how to work together. And I think that the benefits seem to far outweigh the costs. And third, multi-sector coalitions have a proven record. They are evidence-based. Studies have been done to see their effectiveness in addressing human trafficking in community and public health. And then also, the National Low Income Housing Coalition has a campaign called Opportunity Starts at Home, which has been helping states build multi-sector coalitions focused on advocacy for homelessness and housing policy. And so we'll get into Opportunity Starts at Home more in a bit. So let's talk about the power of multi-sector coalitions. We can get into a little theory here, but hopefully it gives a big picture that helps understand more the power that can be tapped into with multi-sector coalitions. So there's this one driving theory regarding human behavior that we call systems theory. This theory informs social workers and other helping professionals to see how humans are affected by various systems in their world. So these can be biological systems, these can be psychological, social, and spiritual, and financial systems. We quickly discover that all of these systems interact with each other and they all impact each other, and realize quickly that everything then is connected. And so systems thinking sees how everything is connected. And we'll watch a quick video to kind of maybe bring some light and understanding to this.
Village of blind men. One day, a new creature arrived. Each of the blind men grasped one part of it and declared that they knew what it was. A snake? A rug? Columns? But, by only experiencing one part of it, each was wrong. In our everyday lives, we also tend to look at things in parts, rather than experiencing the world as a whole. This is not surprising, as such divisions start early on in school, where we are divided into a range of subjects. Yet, the world is much more complex, and if we are to understand its complexity, we need to think about the greater picture. We have to think in systems. So, why don't we use such wisdoms to understand more complex systems and not only love?
Okay, you might have noticed that I kind of clipped the video and I made it shorter. It's almost 5 minutes long. It's a great video. If you go look up a system story on YouTube, I also had a link a little bit on the last slide of this presentation. But the video goes into talking about systems thinking and helping us understand love. And that love isn't just between two people, but there's actually a whole system of other family members and other social networks, even outside the family, that can help explain love altogether. And he goes into theories like non-existent boundaries and attachments and all that. But basically, all to show that if we can use systems thinking to see the big picture of love, to help us understand human behavior of love and interactions between family members and other social networks, why not go to a bigger level? That complex problems need systems thinking. You saw the blocks at the beginning. Housing is just one of those blocks. We realize that we're all connected, and as we solve housing goals, goals of other sectors are solved as well. And so I think that the connection of everything is a part of the influential power of multi-sector coalitions. The same phenomenon with love is at work on a larger level. These multi-sector coalitions seek to acknowledge all the systems at work impacting each other, all the sectors at work that are impacting each other. And they recognize that we need each other, and we need each other's different perspectives to truly address the big issues. And then we hope for the ripple effect, that as we address solutions for one adaptive problem, the goals of other adaptive problems just might be met as well. Therefore, in the case of a multi-sector coalition addressing housing and homeless justice, housing becomes what connects all the sectors. But as we meet the systemic goals for housing and homeless justice, intersecting goals are met for health and education and disability rights and LGBTQ rights and more. And then also, I think there's another hidden power in these coalitions that we can miss if we aren't open to it. These collaborations open a door to working along with that person or organization on the quote unquote other side, those we may not align with or agree with. Now, if we are truly seeking a multi-sector collaboration, we need to do the hard work of finding those shared goals that help us figure out this adaptive problem of homelessness and housing insecurity. I listened to a podcast episode from Opportunity Starts at Home the other day, where they interviewed Gina Wilt, and she's the advocacy director at the Coalition on Homelessness and Housing in Ohio. Ms. Wilt said that multi-sector work is about constantly thinking about who is not at the table and then inviting them. She joked that we'll have to deal with them down the road anyway, so let's bring them to the table now and figure this thing out. So one example she gave was how they had people figuring out win-win ideas for both tenants and landlords, where everyone wins. Now, that's hard work. We don't always like to see everybody winning. And we become a society that's really good at fighting and not so good anymore at dialogue. But multi-sector coalitions just might create the space and the ground for those hard conversations to happen, to bring two groups or two people into the room that wouldn't normally be in the room together, solving something like an adaptive problem that is very difficult to solve and no one has the answer to. So that is hard work. But perhaps at those deeper intersections, we might find a deeper wealth of power and influence and long-term change in the right direction. Okay, now we can jump into looking at some of these cross-sector intersections between housing and other sectors. So again, to help with the illustration, we're driving down the highway of ending homelessness and housing insecurity, and we come across these intersections. And so let's start looking at those with the help of Opportunity Starts at Home. So Opportunity Starts at Home has already done so much great research and has a wonderful website with information on cross-sector intersections. So I'm going to go off of their website to kind of help us see some of these, and then we'll jump back into the presentation. Okay, so my purpose here is to discuss several of these, kind of probably the first 5. And just to get your brain working and dreaming in hopes that this is just the beginning of the conversation of all the intersections that a multi-sector coalition for housing and homeless advocacy can go. We could certainly dig deeper into each of these, but my intention is to convey the influential power of working in these intersections and to hopefully just kind of give a big picture. So first, you have education and housing. Housing and education. It isn't hard to argue that students learn better when they live in a stable home. It is also more likely that they will graduate when they live in a stable home. research shows how housing correlates to increased academic achievement. So having to switch schools due to housing instability or homelessness is a significant obstacle that too many students face. There's this organization called Schoolhouse Connection, and it's an advocacy organization that sees education as a potential means to overcoming homelessness. I think this is brilliant because we sit sometimes in homeless service organizations and housing advocacy organizations and think of how housing can help improve academic achievement. But they're kind of going the other direction, saying, hey, we think that education can help end homelessness and housing insecurity. But what if we all of a sudden find education advocacy organization like Schoolhouse Connection and a housing advocacy organization begin to work together at that intersection and find even deeper wealth of solutions and answers and policies that we could pursue? There's an intersection, there's power, and there's influence. Okay, this is fun. Let's look at housing and health. The website of Opportunity Starts at Home, if you go into it, there's one statistic, they say that young children living in unstable housing are 20% more likely to be hospitalized than those who don't have to worry about continually moving or worry about having anxiety about making the rent payment. In the podcast I mentioned earlier, Ms. Wilt spoke about a children's hospital joining in on their coalition to speak about the impact that this intersection has on making or breaking a child's care for asthma. So this topic is also a potential into the connections between housing and environmental justice. All of a sudden we have like this three-way intersection. We have housing and health coming together, that being able to find housing stability for children can help address their care for asthma. But then education, environmental advocates come in and say, well, but housing stability should take place in neighborhoods that care about having a safe and environmentally healthy place for these children as well, apart from industrial zones or however you want to approach that. And maybe even a three-way intersection like that has even more power that can be discovered. So what about housing and economic mobility and development? We have these here. Safe and affordable housing empowers low-income individuals to achieve better incomes and financial well-being. So if you can have housing stability, maybe you find better financial stability. Think about that. More affordable housing lifts the cost burden experienced by millions, freeing up more family income for necessities that should be a human right, such as nutritious food, transportation, healthcare, and savings. Y'all, I just named 4 sectors right there. I'm talking about human rights and what housing can help free up income to address. So all of a sudden you see intersections with food security and with transportation, with health again, and with financial services. Affordable housing can provide a pathway out of extreme poverty. And then economic development, if we go not just for individual financial well-being, but societal economic well-being. Development of more affordable housing also improves the economy overall. Investments in affordable housing development helps to create jobs, increase revenue for local government, and increase consumer spending in a neighborhood or area when a home is occupied and his income is more freed up. There's a wealth of influence and power that you found at these intersections. So let's talk about one more. Housing and racial equity. And so you see here on the website. And real quick, just want you to see, and we'll talk about more. Opportunity Starts at Home has done research and work on a lot of other intersections as well. And so, housing and racial equity. Sherilyn Hill, the president of the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund, said, housing discrimination is the unfinished business of civil rights. It goes right to the heart of our divide from one another. It goes right to the heart of whether you believe that African American people's lives matter, that you respect them, that you believe they can be your neighbors, that you want them to play with your children. Housing discrimination plays a major role in racial lines existing between neighborhoods of high and low economic opportunity and concentrated poverty. And this is just the tip of the iceberg on this one. Another quote by Myron Orfield, who is a professor at the University of Minnesota Law School. He said, residential segregation is at the heart of racial inequality in the country. All of these disparities in the US in education, in income, wealth, employment, health, between the races are all fundamentally linked to residential segregation. There's no way to deal with disparities between Black and white people without dealing with this. Segregation through redlining and exclusionary zoning policies, and other housing barriers through history has played into everything. Systems thinking, not only opportunity, but also in school districts. It's played into wealth gaps. It's played into home ownership rates, and it's even played into legislative districts and how they're split up, impacting voting power, and so much more. Our systems have created a capitalist hierarchy and have been designed by people to oppress people, especially people of color. This, like I said, is just the tip of the iceberg. And I'm not even going to pretend that I've even come close to giving an exhaustive take or picture of the issue of housing and racial equity, or even any of these other intersections. But the intention is to begin the conversation and dig deeper and further. So these cross-sector intersections for homelessness and housing and education, housing and health, housing and economic mobility and development, housing and racial equity. Now, Opportunity Starts at Home has a similar statement that they often repeat throughout their website that I really like. They say that education advocates are housing advocates. Anti-poverty advocates are housing advocates. Racial equity advocates are housing advocates, and on and on. There's great influence and advocacy to be found at these intersections, and a multi-sector coalition can have the capacity and resources to tap into it. Okay, I'm going to ask you to humor me for a moment. I really am a sucker for an analogy. I love analogies. It brings things to life for me and helps me even become more motivated to dig deeper into things that I get excited about. So there's this song and an illustration that came to mind as I was thinking about cross-sector work and the increasing impact with each additional intersection. So as each intersection is discovered and dealt with, it does something for me. So I don't know if you're familiar with the song Pump Up the Volume, but it's been in my head almost the whole time I've been preparing this presentation. Okay, so just to bring it to life a little bit, if you're an 80s child, maybe it starts to ring a bell. And if you can see me, you can see me grooving and moving a little bit. And as you're going along, 1987. We dance and we groove a little bit. And I have been listening to this song so much, and as I've been listening to this song and thinking about Pump Up the Volume, I've been reminded about this picture that was kind of given to me, just this life picture in this own experience. And so Austin City Limits is not something that I get. I have children. I can't always afford it. There's things that I love music. I would love to get to go all the time, but there was one year that I finally got to make it and go to the Austin City Limits Music Festival. And at the end of the weekend, of even both the weekends, the headliner band in the entire event was Pearl Jam. And I got to be there and see them. And the situation, though, and the context of this story is that the residents of the Zilker area have been able to kind of get their way with a sound ordinance to where they had to kind of shut off the sound and be done by 10 p.m. Okay, so it doesn't keep on being loud late into the night. And because of this sound ordinance, kind of throughout the day, you would experience situations where sets from different bands would just all of a sudden be cut off. Like they'd be playing, and then all of a sudden the sound is off. so that they can move along and stay with the schedule and be done by 10 p.m. Now, there's one band in The Replacements who, legendary in their right, depending on who is paying attention and likes a certain genre of music. But I was actually listening to another band, but I could see kind of to my left the other stage where The Replacements were playing, and I actually could see that kind of the sound was cut off on them. And as I kind of started hearing booing and everything, and I looked over and I could see the guitarist, and I always hate seeing this, but the guitarist smashed his guitar and broke it and went off the stage, stormed off the stage just mad as can be. And so fast forward to Pearl Jam. Here we are. Eddie Vedder, the lead singer, kind of actually made mention of The Replacements and told everybody how great a band this is, and pretty much just how unjust it was that they were cut off and their set was just cut off and they couldn't finish. And so as you get to the very end, right before the clock strikes 10 p.m., they've already played a song for an encore and they keep going, okay? And they start a new song. And as they get towards the end of it, right before the clock strikes 10 p.m., the lead guitarist begins to play a solo, and it's the Star Spangled Banner. Okay, and he's playing it Jimi Hendrix style. It is just, he's squealing and screeching and wailing. And as seconds go by, every few seconds, Eddie Vedder goes over to the amp and he holds on to the volume knob and he just turns it up a little bit more every few seconds, and then turns it up a little bit more, and it's just getting louder and louder. Now it's after 10 p.m. It's Pearl Jam. It's kind of a situation. I'm sure the people working Austin City Limits were having a dilemma of what do we do in this situation, but people were just starting to cheer, and it was just exciting just to see this band be like, take that. And here's kind of the way I see the multi-sector coalitions: is every intersection that we discover and untap and dig into is just like pumping up the volume a little more. And you just turn that knob up a little more, little by little, increasing the overall influence of the goals of this multi-sector coalition. And so let's pump up the volume as we keep discovering and keep discussing the different sectors and the way we're all connected and finding deeper solutions. Now, there are just a handful of the 14 intersections on the Opportunity Starts at Home website. I literally just shared a handful. But there's no doubt that this is not an exhaustive list of who all needs to be at the table as we advocate for strong policy that can end homelessness and increase affordable and decent housing for all Americans. So I want to share a video here, and this isn't connected to homelessness and housing insecurity, but it is a picture and a video showing the real impact and influence of a multi-sector collaboration in just one community, and maybe just even give us a clearer picture of the influence of multi-sector coalitions.
The shortest distance between 2 points is always collaboration, is always partnership.
We began the project with everybody thrilled with one another and so excited about what it was we were embarking upon. Brand new, public-private partnership, not anything we had ever done before.
We began to work with the partners who we'd already been working with on affordable housing developments to say, how can we better align our work?
Well, the early conversations really dealt with this concept. Could this be done? Could a private institution in the city form a private-public partnership that could work?
In the beginning, everyone was a skeptic. I was a skeptic. Everyone was a skeptic. Nobody had ever done it.
One of the things that we've learned is that co-location doesn't by itself equal coordination or collaboration.
There were so many different dimensions to this: the design, the programming, the use of the land, the financing of the project.
Very different cultures, very different operating styles.
Some of us approach issues from the neighborhood level, some from an institutional level, some from the governmental level.
None of us use the same data system. So some use Salesforce and some use efforts to outcomes to Excel to like completely different systems.
We went back and forth about the allotment of parking spaces for staff at one point. When we were talking, we thought we were talking about the same thing, but we weren't.
Perfection can be the enemy of the very, very good. We know that we're never going to get everything right in every community the first time, but we've got to try some new things.
It's just critical that the leaders in these organizations understand and value that partnership.
What has made it work is that we're all committed to stay at the table until we find the third way.
I think having trust early on is critical.
And you develop trust by getting to know each other, by being honest, by being forthright.
A strong point for us to come back to what our vision is around creating this healthy neighborhood, and then working with the coalition and working with the partners around understanding the vision.
And in about year 3 or year 4, you will have felt you're doing a whole lot of work and you haven't seen much change yet. But what happens when you get to about year 5, you blow right through that wall.
It's really exciting work. It's exciting work because people's lives are really changed.
In terms of what we will be able to bring to the neighborhood, the additional services, the increased access to all kinds of services, we absolutely think this was worth it.
Without this collaboration, we're paying a pound of cure for things that an ounce of prevention would address.
You're naive to think that you can do something like this alone. You can't.
The magic is the partnerships. Forming them, maintaining them will get you more resources, more innovation, more creativity.
And if we get out of the silos that we've been in, I think it's going to be much more effective. And I think we've got a great opportunity now.
So I think it's that intersection that is what the driver and what will really change communities for forever.
So I love the video. I believe that this type of collaboration can have the same power and influence in homelessness and have housing advocacy as well. As I talked about earlier, a proven record spanning all kinds of different adaptive problems. Multi-sector coalitions are evidence-based and they work. So, existing coalitions. Fortunately, Opportunity Starts at Home has already been well underway to help numerous states build multi-sector advocacy coalitions addressing homeless and housing policy in the United States. So here are just a few of the states with these coalitions. We're from Colorado, Illinois, New Jersey, Oregon. I think it's 13 there. It might be more. You can count yourself there, but there are just a few states with these coalitions. And Texas is now in the works and underway. And Texas Homeless Network is definitely a part of this work, along with Opportunity Starts at Home, to see a Texas-based multi-sector coalition, along with these others, to address policy that will get us to ending homelessness and housing insecurity. And that's great news. So the third way, in the middle of the video that I just showed you, Joshua Simon makes a statement that I love. He says, what has made it work is that we are all committed to stay at the table until we find the third way. The third way. I love that phrase and that concept and idea. As mentioned before, adaptive problems are ones that we don't have the answer to. especially not just one of us. Miss Wilt in the podcast, at one point in the podcast, says that we need everyone at the table to figure this out. So the health sector alone won't have the answer to ending homelessness. The education sector alone won't have the answer to ending homelessness. We, housing advocates, don't have the answer to ending homelessness. Though, together, maybe we can find the third way that leads us towards an equitable, just, and long-term outcome for everyone. Also, we discussed having this space of differences and people that wouldn't normally be in a room together, being able to come together and solve these adaptive problems. We've become a society that has forgotten how to dialogue, and we are really good at fighting. But what if we had at the table more of these conversations with the humility of saying, I don't have the answer, but maybe we can find the answer together and finding that third way. So maybe by commitment together, we can find solutions to end homelessness and housing insecurity for all Americans. So thank you for your time today, and I hope you all take care. Goodbye.